his whole kind of power model rests on providing as much income to each of FIFA's, I think, 209 member nations as possible. And to do that, he needs to create content. We're all in the content creation business, Rog. Me, you, Gianni. We're all exactly the same.
We're all just humble podcasters.
Gianni's just a podcaster who got too much power.
It's Rog, and we are just over 36 hours away before Leo Messi's Inter Miami, as they're officially known, take on potentially jet-lagged Egyptian giants Al Ahly in front of that dynamically priced crowd at Miami's Hard Rock Stadium in the opening match of this summer's Club World Cup. It seems to be FIFA's own version of the We Are the World recording sessions, bringing together some of the world's biggest football clubs and some of its lesser-known teams, the Tito Jacksons of the Opta Power rankings, if you will, for a month of matches that will be littered across the United States. In some degree, a 30-day run of fixtures that might end up with all of us knowing a little bit more about South Africa's Mamelodi Sundowns than we ever thought was humanly possible. And to help us understand it all, how we got here, what FIFA hopes to accomplish with this tournament, to talk through the 32 participating teams and to predict which one of them might leave the MetLife Stadium with a Tiffany-designed gold trophy that looks, well, little like what you get for running the third best planetarium in Atlanta. It's my mate, pride of Harrogate and the Observer. It's Mr. Rory Smith.
How you doing, Rog?
Roy, you've just told me something staggering. Tell the world what you just told me.
I am fully gold-pilled on the Club World Cup. I've spent the last few days reporting and writing about it, and do you know what? I'm ready for Gianni Palooza.
My God, what could possibly go wrong now? Gianni Palooza or Gianni Fire Festival? You be the judge. That's really the question everybody's asking in world football. By the way, we win either way, let's be candid. But I want to get into this. I want to get into the teams. I want to give our listeners a sense of, the actual football aspect of this tournament. But we have to start with the biggest question. And at the risk of sounding a little bit Edwin Starr on your asses, Club World Cup, like war, what is it good for? And it's not absolutely nothing. Stop shouting that at your pod radio. But I will say, judging by the dire reports about ticket sales, we do have to take this is a mad idea, this tournament, but it's not a new one. This competition has quite happily and relatively modestly been played 20 times in the past 25 years. But until this summer of bloat, the format was a 7-club event featuring the winners of all 6 of FIFA's exquisite federations and the host country's league champion. It was mostly wedged into a couple of weeks in December, save for the COVID-era February run, but now it's expanded and exploded, a bit like a mogwai that FIFA president Gianni Infantino intentionally splashed with water. Man just could not help himself into this 32-team, quite big gulp extravaganza, which includes representatives from all 6 FIFA confederations in North and South America, Europe, Africa, Asia and Oceania's own little Auckland city, where I've got to ask you, I know FIFA's locked in like a Maximus versus Commodus-esque battle to the death with UEFA for control of football's most valuable real estate, but really, what the F is FIFA trying to do with this?
As you say, I think it's important to kind of place it in its historical context a little bit, just because FIFA themselves have been a bit weird about that. That's one of the things I've realised this week as I've kind of turned my attention to it. To me, this looks like, what you've just described, it's like an expansion of the old Club World Cup, which was in turn an expansion of what we used to call the Intercontinental Cup. That's been part of kind of football's global landscape for years, and you can definitely make a case that no one really made enough of it for quite a long time. But there are plenty of games, particularly in the Intercontinental Cup, which was just the champions of Europe playing the champions of South America. Lots of those games are kind of part of football law, really, LORE rather than LAW. These games where Argentine sides would kick the crap out of these English teams just to kind of prove a post-colonial point.
Yeah, that's what it was. That's the players who were just like, take this for post-colonialism. That's the only reason they did it, right?
But the FIFA themselves have been really weird about whether this tournament that we've got this summer is new or whether it's just like an extra version, a bigger version of what went before. And the reason they've expanded it is the same reason they expand everything, because Gianni Infantino, the president of FIFA, his whole kind of power model rests on providing as much income to each of FIFA's, I think, 209 member nations as possible. And to do that, he needs to create content. We're all in the content creation business, Rog. Me, you, Gianni. We're all exactly the same.
We're all just humble podcasters.
Gianni's just a podcaster who got too much power.
He's just a carpenter.
So they obviously they've expanded the World Cup for that reason, and they decided, and I think not without reason, to expand the Club World Cup, because as I say, you could easily make the case that it was kind of an underdeveloped part of football's real estate, that it should have been a bigger thing than it was. I think that in doing so, they not only want to increase the kind of cash flow to various different parts of the world, which is probably overall a kind of an admirable or vaguely praiseworthy thing, but they're also trying to strike a blow against UEFA. FIFA know, as we all do, that the biggest, kind of most lucrative, most valuable competition in club football is the Champions League. UEFA control the Champions League. UEFA's power base is the Champions League. FIFA don't like UEFA having a power base. FIFA want to take that power base away from UEFA. And so what they're gambling with effectively is, if we do what looked an awful lot like a global Champions League, that should be bigger and more important and eventually more glamorous and more lucrative than the European Champions League.
So last summer, fellow podcaster Johnny Infantino described, just I'm going to talk about him all the time. He's just a podcaster, man. Well, he described the Club World Cup as, quote, the pinnacle of elite professional men's club football. And, well, is he the only person on this planet who believes that's the case? Or put another way, is it possible to manufacture prestige just like by jamming a trophy into a blue Tiffany box? Because when I hear him speak about this tournament, Johnny, it always reminds me of one thing and one thing only, and that's Michael Scott believing that you can declare bankruptcy just by yelling, I declare bankruptcy.
That is the perfect parallel, and there is definitely a world in which the Club World Cup trophy is roughly as valuable as a Dundee. I think that's entirely possible. But I'm really interested in this subject, Rog. I find it fascinating because football's dirty little secret really is that prestige is something we just agree on. It's a convention. It's not something that was handed down from on high. So we've all kind of decided, fans, journalists, players, managers, executives, we've all decided that the Champions League is really important. We've all decided that we care which football team is champion of England or Italy or Spain. None of that stuff actually matters. Like, it's a game. We're allowed to, you can opt out of it at any point, like all the best competitions. I think the mistake FIFA have made is that they have assumed that by offering as much money as possible in prize money to the winners, you can kind of put a cash price on prestige. I don't think that's true. I think prestige comes from players and teams caring about a tournament, and as a consequence, fans detecting that this thing matters. What will determine whether the Club World Cup is a success or not is not how much is on offer to the winner, or the base amount of money that teams get for competing. It's not the fact that Gianni and fellow podcaster Matthias Grafström, one of FIFA's many vice presidency type people, keep saying, this tournament's here to stay, we're going to do it again in 4 years. I think secretly they'd quite like to do it every 2 years, to be perfectly honest. It's whether the teams themselves are up for it. And having spoken to quite a few teams now who are competing, I would say that the vast majority really think this is important. If you're a South American team, you are bang up for this because you really want to punch Europe in the face. That's an important football tradition. If you're an Asian, African, North American, or even Oceanian team, in the case of Auckland City, you are going to see this as your chance to kind of declare to the world that not only do you exist, not only that this is your story, this is what makes you special, your club special, but that you can kind of compete with Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich and Real Madrid and Manchester City, that you belong on the same stage, that you are of the same thing as them. The big question mark is, what do the European teams make of it? Because they are ultimately, like it or not, they are the teams that kind of we regard as the pinnacle of the elite. The clubs themselves are all saying they're up for it. The clubs themselves are all saying they want to win. I think they all want, A, the money, and B, the chance to call themselves world champions. The final piece in the jigsaw is the fans. My guess is that the fans will start to care once they understand that the teams themselves care. I think that's what will happen. As a Liverpool fan, Rog, I fully expect to be saying that this tournament does not matter if an English team wins it, which is probably the best gauge of whether it's important or not. But I think as soon as the fans can see that the teams actually want to win this thing, that it's serious, it would help, if Botafogo beat Atletico Madrid early on, or Boca Juniors beat Bayern Munich. That would help if the European teams felt peril, felt danger. But I think as soon as the fans see that the teams care, I think the fans will follow.
God, I don't think this tournament can really have legitimacy until the reigning champions of the Florida Cup are also included in the competition. But what you're saying essentially is there is a timeline, maybe not this campaign, which is almost like beta testing. I wrote today in our newsletter, there was a bit like this tournament was a bit like watching a massive comedian, like when you see Jerry Seinfeld in a tiny comedy club still workshopping his material before he goes on a national tour. But you can see a time in the future, near future, when this tournament could theoretically eclipse even the Champions League. Is that, in terms of the deciding factor for footballing supremacy?
That's maybe a bit further off, to be perfectly honest, because the Champions League is annual, because it's the Champions League. I do think it meets a need. It makes sense to me to have a chance for the best teams in Europe and the best teams in South America, Africa and Asia and North America to face each other. That, I think, is a logical thing to happen. There's no question that the motivations behind it are not pure. Gianni Infantino has not conjured this competition, this vanity project, because he really cares about spreading the wealth of European football to, Esperance to Tunis. That's not what's happened. This is about his vanity. It's about his desire for a legacy, and it's about a land grab for part of the riches on offer in the club game. Those are the motivations, and we should all open our eyes, be grown-ups about it. That is why this thing is happening. But I do think that the idea of being world champions will appeal to clubs and to fans. I do think that prestige in sport is a construct. It's a convention that we all decide on. And I think at a certain point down the path, I can see a world where teams are like, actually, do you know what? We quite want to be involved in the Club World Cup. It is interesting. It's got like a different texture to the Champions League, a different feel. And I'm sure at that point, as soon as that happens, FIFA will ruin it by expanding it, and we'll all complain and we'll say, well, actually, the 32-team Club World Cup is the classic model of the Club World Cup, and that's what it should be. I think it would be equally naive, if we were to say this is a craven and venal project and therefore it won't work. I think football history kind of suggests that the craven and venal projects kind of do work.
That's why we watch.
If you think about the Champions League, that was invented by journalists. L'Équipe just came up with it because they wanted to test a hypothesis about where the best club teams in Europe were. And that was 70 years ago, and now look at the Champions League.
So what I'm listening to you, and I'm like, I long for the day in about 25 years' time, 30 years' time, when we're nostalgic for the days of a 32. That's how the Club World Cup should be, just 32 teams. They've ruined it by having 12,736.
It's literally all the clubs in the world. Everyone enters it.
By the way, that I'm interested in, fellow journalists. You've just had a great idea. I can imagine, by the way, Johnny sitting there tonight thinking, what does the Champions League have that my tournament doesn't? And when they run out tomorrow for that first game, the players line up and the anthem, which has been hastily written for the Club World Cup, bursts out before the players start, and it's just a complete rip-up of the champions. It's the Club World Cup champions. It would just be amazing if he just knocks the whole thing off, utterly ersat, sod you FIFA. And then he's like, God, if PSG win this after winning the Champions League and everything else, it'll be like the footballing equivalent of an EGOT. Claim it all, Gianni, you beautiful fellow podcaster. You and I obviously very much team Gianni as fellow podcasters. We feel a lot. It's podcasters union, isn't it, Ro? We do connect to him emotionally.
He is. I had a conversation with someone this week, about how Gianni Infantino really makes you miss Sepp Blatter. He is incredibly unavailable, doesn't really talk. I think he has spoken this week publicly. It's really hard to get a grip on kind of what he wants the game to be, other than something that he's in charge of. He's not a naturally sympathetic character, and I think if you were doing his marketing, you'd probably say, look, Gianni, if you want this tournament to work and people to like it, maybe you need to take a backseat role.
No, why would he do that? I've got to tell you, because ultimately he's just a podcaster streamer. He's not just a podcaster. I think we've actually underestimated him. Watching him on Speed stream was genuinely in the I hope one day when civilization has destroyed itself and aliens come down, the one smouldering piece of fragment of evidence of our society they find is just an image of Speed sitting side by side with Gianni Infantino, those two greats. I think you can explain everything about the current zeitgeist with those two. And God bless him, why would he take a back seat? Why should he? He won't be stopped. In ways, I think this Club World Cup is just designed so that he had a chance to have his own name engraved, not just once. Why would you only want your name engraved once on a trophy when you can actually have it engraved twice, which is quite magnificent? I mean, I don't think you can do it enough. Former Liverpool defender turned commentator Jamie Carragher, another friend of Speed, that bard of Bootle, has said that it feels artificially manufactured by FIFA, adding, "I can't envisage me stopping my holiday or going in from the swimming pool to watch a game. I think I'll probably forget it's on." That's quite a book blurb, Jamie. Part of his concern is really altruistic, which is to do with player welfare. And Jamie Carragher's talked a lot, and there's a lot of, I'd say, rumble in the football world, but not a lot of action, a lot of talk, almost no action about when do the players have time to rest in this new, just oversaturated era of football. The Club World Cup starts just a week after a lot of the players finished international duty playing World Cup qualifiers or even the vaunted Nations League. Some players have talked quite openly about the ever-increasing number of fixtures that just keep stacking up, almost like snow on their calendars. And this Club World Cup, starting off anyway as an every 4-year event, many believe it will become an every 2-year event, but European players have been involved in last summer's Euro, so they've already had a ceaseless season into the Club World Cup, into next summer's World Cup without a break. It is breathless stuff. Bayern Munich's Harry Kane was amongst those who said both, "I'm really excited about taking part." He said that in March. But back in March, he also said he didn't feel the players were being listened to when it came to grave concerns about their welfare. This is his quote: "There's only so much you can do without more injuries." Rory, we all talk about this. Player burnout, physical fatigue, mental fatigue, the quality of football as a result. But the games, they keep on coming. Is there ever going to be a breaking point, or is this just a new reality? Super teams, super squads, permanent year-round footballing calendar, no breaks, never mind the quality of the game, let's just chase the money.
Yeah, I think there's a very real risk that that's exactly where we're heading, Rog, to be honest. I don't see how it is meaningfully altered. One of the people I spoke to this week about this tournament was the president of Flamengo, the biggest club in Brazil. And he kind of explained very, very kind of patiently that for all that the Europeans complain about it, the situation in Brazil is much worse. Because they play state championships, they play national leagues, they play the Brazilian Cup, and quite a lot of their teams will play in the Libertadores. They then have 4 teams in the Club World Cup. So for some of those 4 teams, if they all get as far as they intend to, they will be playing 80 games in a season, which is most. I mean, European teams complain legitimately when they hit 60. Brazilians, as a matter of course, really are playing potentially 80. And he said, if you allow a month for pre-season, a month of holiday, which I think FIFPro have asked for, the Players' Union, you're looking at a game every 3 days all year round. And that is going to break the players. FIFPro, the Players' Union, are trying to do something about it. They've lodged the complaint with the European Commission. I think we all support football, Rog, because of the involvement of the European Commission. It's what we like. It's what you want in your football journalism. Whether that will make any difference, I don't hold out a great amount of hope. The players are becoming more militant about it. I think it's possible that at some point we might see some sort of actual collective action from the players to try and staunch it. But Luis Eduardo Baptista, the president of Flamengo, I think put it perfectly, where he said the issue is the federations won't give any ground. FIFA won't give any ground. The leagues won't give any ground. Yeah, the confederations, CONMEBOL or UEFA or whoever, they won't give any ground. So everybody is protecting their own little bit. And if everybody's protecting their own little bit, all that happens is that, well, the best case scenario is things stay the same, and worst case scenario is people keep adding more games on to try and extract just a little bit more money out of these kind of endless content creating machines that are footballers. And the quality of the product does diminish. And you are looking at genuine health and well-being risks for the players. And until they can solve that problem where people are prepared to say, okay, do you know what? we want our Champions League to involve 15 games, but we accept that we have to sacrifice something for everybody else to sacrifice something. Until you reach that point of genuine altruism, nothing will change.
I've got to wonder how this tournament will be seen by the clubs this season. Because I can remember 2019 when your Liverpool beat Flamengo in extra time. I think it was the 99th minute winner. Oh, a moment of wonder by crazy Bobby Firmino. And back then, the tournament, I think, had the kind of quality, the calibre, the cultural water cooler conversation level of some random made-for-TV movie, because I think immediately last place Watford beat Manchester United in the Premier League next day, which completely and utterly overshadowed the game. Back then, naive days. I think Liverpool were allowed to wear the metallic Club World Cup winners badge on their kits for one single Premier League game. That was back when the winner took home just over $5 million. But this summer, FIFA's dispensing an eye-watering $1 billion in prize money to the participants. Winner is reported to be able to take home as much as $125 million. That dollar amount is technically known, I think, as a Bellingham or a Grealish by economists. The money is very real. Yes, came from Saudi Arabia as a gift for Gianni and his big vision here. But do we expect, mentally, footballers as tired, fatigued, shattered as they are going to love just thinking about those piles of cash and get stuck in?
I don't think it's the money that motivates the players. That might be naive, and I'm sure that the fact that there will be performance bonuses will help. But I think once the competition starts, and certainly as it kind of ticks into the kind of latter stages, I think the players will want to win something. This is, again, I will raise the possibility that I am being a hopeless, wide-eyed innocent. When the Nations League launched in Europe, the accusation was that it would ruin football, that it was kind of unnecessarily kind of spoilt the glory of friendlies or whatever, I don't know, and that it was this kind of meaningless artificial construct, which it was, it absolutely was, because all of these tournaments are artificial constructs. None of this stuff has to happen. It just does, and it's great that it does. But it doesn't. It's not compulsory. Football is not compulsory. We don't understand that nearly enough.
That's amazing. If you were a tifo manufacturer, Raw, I think that might be your greatest work. Football is not compulsory.
None of this stuff has to happen. Just a massive Legia Warsaw tifo of it.
Yeah, and then I'm like, Inter Miami against Al Ahly.
Well, this is it. So it's all artificial. It's all a game. But the Nations League, in what, the 5-6 years of its existence, maybe not even, maybe a little bit longer, has reached the point where the mere prospect of winning it was enough to make Cristiano Ronaldo cry. In Munich last week, as Portugal beat Spain on penalties, Cristiano was in floods of admittedly moderately performative tears at the fact that he'd won another Nations League with Portugal.
Since he was a child, he's dreamt of that day.
He has dreamt of winning a competition that did not exist when he was a child, since he was a child.
Yeah.
Some would say that Cristiano Ronaldo is still, to an extent, a child.
Yeah, and also, what else did he dream about, probably? He's so competitive. He dreamt of winning tournaments that weren't even in existence when he was a kid. That's aura.
Quite possibly. But, you couldn't look at Ronaldo and think maybe he's overdoing it a bit. But you couldn't look at Ronaldo in Munich and think that competition meant nothing. And all right, you're representing your country. But I think to a player, if you're playing a semi-final of a Club World Cup, you would probably want to win that game because you'll be thinking, I give it 3 days and I might be able to call myself a champion of the world. That is quite a compelling thing to do. And certainly if you're a player for a non-European team, or even, to be honest, like a non-Real Madrid, Man City, PSG team, you'll be wanting to prove that you can compete with the very best in the world. And I think that's the motivation the players will have. Certainly the non-European sides. But I think as the tournament goes on, it will apply to the European sides as well. Because the players ultimately are competitive. They want to win stuff. That's what keeps them all going. And this will eventually, for them, start to feel like a thing worth winning.
I will say, if I were to be part of the winning team, I would set aside at least $500,000 to go and immediately buy the sweater vest Matthew Broderick wore in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which is now up for auction. Price to go at just $500,000. Honestly, talking about aura, that is pure acrylic aura. But that's just me, Raw. And it is time to pivot away from that fantasy and look at the groups. Let's briefly mention some of the teams who won't be participating. A list that includes La Liga champions Barcelona, your Premier League winners Liverpool, your perennial runners-up Arsenal Football Club and newly crowned Serie A title holders, Napoli's fighting McTominays. Also, after Portugal won the Nations League on Sunday, Al Nassr's own Cristiano Ronaldo said that he, quote, had pretty much made up my mind not to go to the Club World Cup, which is like me announcing that I won't be attending the Met Gala this year or any year. I gotta say, Al Nassr, like me, were not invited. They didn't qualify, but thanks for the update. I guess moving on. Group A for, are we really doing this? It includes Inter Miami, who somehow qualified, checks notes by winning the MLS Supporters Shield last season. That's how it works, and that's how I'm sure it will always work. Yes, they won the trophy awarded to MLS team with the best regular season record. They're in there, along with Porto, 45-time Egyptian Premier League winners, Al Ahly, just a giant of a club in that region, club that dominates almost like Beyonce at the Grammys, and Brazilian club Palmeiras, who are currently fourth in Brazil. Syria are into Miami. I mean, is the rest of the world just like, yeah, they belong, or are they slightly dodgy, or you're not even, the rules are just not even known, so no one cares in this moment?
Funny if I think bringing Inter Miami in did a degree of damage to the tournament. I think until that point, you could just about defend the idea that all of the teams had qualified through some sort of merit. There's a couple of slightly odd European inclusions that are the consequence of UEFA basically not wanting all of the big European teams to be there. I'm not sure you need Red Bull Salzburg in a Club World Cup, if I'm honest. But Inter Miami, it made it so obvious that it was a deliberate ploy to get Lionel Messi there, to have that star power, that it did run the risk, and it may well have this may well still apply, of making it look like a pre-season friendly tournament, a kind of invitational that certain clubs were being invited to because of their commercial pull, their marketing prowess, and that is unfortunate but entirely predictable that FIFA would have made that mistake.
Group B, made up of PSG, you've still got that new trophy car smell, Atletico Madrid, defending Copa Libertadores champion Botafogo, and your Seattle Sounders, while Group C includes German champions Bayern Munich, undoubtedly determined to show Florian Wirtz what he could have had. Portugal's Primeira Liga runners-up Benfica, historic Argentine powerhouse Boca Juniors, and New Zealand's ... Auckland City FC, who are by any number of metrics the lowest ranked team in the tournament. They're really a hilarious story. The presence to me is possibly the most appealing part of the entire event. I am trying to buy a Auckland City tracksuit because I love them so much. Stay with me here. They're an all amateur club. Their players don't get paid for games or for training. Striker Angus Kilcolly, for example, has talked about how he's had to burn all his vacation time and take unpaid leave from his full-time job as a site manager for a power tools company. He said that this tournament lets the team, quote, have that feeling of being a professional footballer without being one. Honestly, I want them to win it all so bloody badly. They'll receive an estimated $1.5 million just for participating. Some of that money they're currently negotiating to work out what they get to keep and what goes to other teams in their region. But, for all of these teams, if they get to keep that money, it's going to pervert their leagues forever. This tournament is a bit like, in that way, like that strange Chinese fish that about 10 years ago entered the lake in Florida and just ended up eating the entire natural ecosystem.
Yeah, it's one of the things that we're going to have to wait to see what the actual effect is, but it looks pretty much like that's what's going to happen, that the amount of money that you give to these teams will have a mildly distorting effect in France and Italy and maybe Spain and Germany, potentially even the Premier League. It will have a considerably distorting effect in Brazil and Argentina. I think someone said to me that if Fluminense were to win it, or were to get quite far in it, that would account for 70% of their annual revenue. That's a lot of money. In countries like Tunisia, Morocco, Egypt, South Africa, it may well seal the title for the next 10 or 15 years. I mean, I don't see how... I mean, Al Ahly have already got a massive financial advantage in Egypt. I don't see how giving them $20-30 million does anything other than make them by some distance basically untouchable as kind of perennial champions. I think in Auckland City's case, and I agree with you, I think Auckland City are an astonishing story. It's really heartwarming, and it's part of football's charm, I guess, that even in the most craven surroundings, you get this story that's incredibly romantic. They're the Bodo Glimt of this summer, Rog. That's what they are. That money won't have quite the same effect in New Zealand because it's amateur. They can't go and sign a load of players. That's not possible. So they would use, I suspect, the money that they keep, they would use for infrastructure and for facilities and for kind of and grassroots stuff, which is, if anything, kind of what we should be using all of this money for, to be perfectly honest. But as you say, that is a process that I believe is still in mediation. They are the team that will capture everybody's hearts, and for them to have that group, to have Bayern Munich, to have Borussia, to have Benfica, is just amazing.
It is amazing. I got to remind listeners, the top 2 teams from each group advance to the round of 16. Well, when you look at these first 3 groups, do you see any potential upsets, any moments, any matches where we'll first get to say we experienced the magic of the Club World Cup, a phrase that FIFA's undoubtedly trying to trademark even as they're speaking?
I don't know if upsets count, but one of the things that I think is maybe being underplayed a little bit is that generally when we see teams from other confederations playing European sides, they are playing the best team in Europe. They are playing the team that has just won the Champions League at the Club World Cup, the small baby Club World Cup. And the gap often looks quite big. So there are occasions, and you mentioned Flamengo-Liverpool from 2019, when Flamengo could easily have won that game. There are other occasions where it's kind of a whitewash. The European side just kind of beats them 3-0 and everyone gets on with their lives. But what we have here are quite a lot of European teams who are not at that level. So I'm genuinely interested to know whether Palmeiras are better or worse than FC Porto. I don't know if they necessarily would be worse than FC Porto. Botafogo, the reigning South American champions, maybe can't match PSG, but they might be able to match Atletico Madrid. And then Boca, with all of that Argentine kind of fighting spirit, desire to prove a point, against the Bayern Munich, who might be a little bit underclubbed. That's not impossible. And I think once those results start coming through, you don't need all 3 of them, maybe just one of them, then maybe that's when it starts to feel like a tournament where something's actively at stake. Personally, I will be hoping that Auckland City take some points off Benfica or Boca Juniors.
Well, you and I have always ridden for Auckland City for how long? Years, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've been supporting Auckland City since I first learnt of their existence.
Raw is proper. He doesn't like to talk about this because he's very professional and separates personal from. And I don't like to out you, but you are a member of North Yorkshire Auckland City Ultras.
I think I am the only North Yorkshire Auckland City Ultra. I'm the founding member and chief executive.
Group D, for Don't You Forget About Me, includes Chelsea, heard of them, one of the 2 Premier League teams in the tournament. Flamengo, currently top of the league in Brazil, recently signed midfielder Jorginho from Arsenal, heard of him. They feature a forward, named Everton, which is probably the closest Everton will ever get to the tournament, along with the Tunisian champions, Esperance Sportive de Tunis, and LAFC, who've already won the most dramatic way to qualify trophy by beating Mexico's Club America 2-1 in a 1-game playoff, thanks to a 115th minute goal from hero Denny Buanga. Rory, Chelsea, coming off a 4th place Premier League finish. The Europa Conference League win is the stuff that ballads are made of. How important do you think this tournament will be for the team?
For Chelsea, I think it's a chance to kind of stake a claim to being one of Europe's elite again a little bit. Their status has fallen slightly in recent years, and I think they could maybe do with a good showing to remind everybody that Chelsea have been a superpower for a long time. They've obviously got a lot of players they need to keep happy. I think that will play in their favour, because they might not be quite as tired as everybody else. They've got a Champions League campaign, a return to the Champions League next season. They are in the business of not only recruiting, but trying to recruit a higher level of player, and for that you kind of need a little bit more prestige. So I think for Chelsea it's quite a big thing. They are not in the same class, or haven't been in recent years, as PSG, Man City, Real Madrid. This is their chance to sort of say that they belong on that level again.
Meanwhile, Group E, made up of Argentina's River Plate, Japan's Urawa Red Diamonds, along with Liga MX's Monterrey, led by coach Dominic Torrent, who was Pep Guardiola's assistant at Barcelona, by Munich, Man City, in their 11 years together. Those teams won a combined 24 trophies. Also includes Inter Milan, who just appointed 44-year-old former helmeted defender Christian Chivu as their new coach earlier this week, following Simon Inzaghi's resignation after Inter's 5-0 loss to PSG in the Champions League final. In his first interview, Chivu said, quote, "My work will start with the Club World Cup. The season isn't over. We need to get our mental energy back." Raw, we all watched the Champions League final with our own eyes. Their mental energy, well, it receded faster than Walton Goggins' hairline. Is this group one that could possibly be the most up for grabs in the entire field?
Yeah, I think if you're certainly River or Monterrey, you're probably looking at it and thinking that Inter are not going to be in any great state in this competition. Not just mentally, but I think physically they looked really tired in that Champions League final as well. And as much as Kivu's presence, I suppose, might be a lift for them, it might give them that sense of a fresh start. They looked like an old team in need of a break against PSG. So I think if you're River or Monterrey, or maybe I'm not showing enough respect to Urawa Reds, but I think all of those will be looking at Inter as a European team that you could potentially take points off, that you could claim you could bloody the nose of effectively. And I think actually Group F is similar, to be honest. I think that would be the other one where the teams from outside Europe will be looking at it and thinking there's a chance here.
Yes, let's talk about Group F. For FME, there's a lot of teams involved in this. Brazil's Fluminense, captained by 40-year-old defender Thiago Silva, says he's 40, features midfielder Victor Hugo, proving it's harder than ever to make a living just as a little novelist, along with defending Korean champions Ulsan HD, South Africa's Mamelodi Sundowns, who just eight-peated. Yes, why is the rest of the world not talking about this more? Octo-peated as Premiership champions Viva Macedonia and Borussia Dortmund, who have just spent an estimated $43 million on their second Bellingham brother after signing Job from Sunderland. And Group G, oh my God, for getting closer to the end now, please, is Morocco's Wydad AC, Abu Dhabi's Al Ain FC, Juventus and Manchester City, who've already started rearming themselves for the season ahead after signing midfielder Tierney Reinders from AC Milan, Wolves left back Ryan Aït-Nouri, and the fantastically dashing Lyon playmaker Rayan Cherki, possibly just so Pep could get a BOGO deal on Rayan personalised keychains. Now, in March, when Pep was asked about this tournament, he said, quote, "The golf courses are really nice in America." God, Pep doing comedy is just next level. And he said he'd look forward to playing during his time here, quote, "if his back allowed it." But this is a new tournament, Raw, a new start, a chance to distance ourselves from City's disappointing Premier League campaign, where they finished a distant 13 points behind Liverpool. How do you expect Pep and City to approach this opportunity?
I think Pep and City will be very keen to win it, to be perfectly honest. They've spent somewhere in the region of $400 million this year, which is pretty good going for Manchester City. They've had a desperately disappointing campaign, no trophies, a distant third place finish in the league. You know, they weren't in the title race at all from about October onwards. They need a fillip, they need a boost. And I think if they were to, no one's quite clear on whether this is the start of next season or the end of last season. It feels like we're kind of in a liminal period a little bit. But
liminal
I think
football.
If they were to end July as world champions, I think that's the sort of thing that I can see Manchester City's owners, the club hierarchy, Ferran Soriano, the chief executive, taking extremely seriously. And the other thing we know about Pep is that for all you talk about, you know, the style of play, the kind of the philosophy, the ideas, the identity, Pep Guardiola loves winning stuff. He really loves winning stuff. The man counts the Community Shield as a major trophy. He will want to win this one.
Never won the Florida Cup. And finally, we're at Group H. My God, so many letters in the alphabet. Who knew? The last group. By the way, there's a Group L, isn't there, in the bloody World Cup?
There was going to be a Group L. There isn't a Group L in the World Cup.
My God, I mean, this is like, why do we watch football? Because in the same way as we watch Sesame Street, just for the letters, this is the last group in this polyphonic spree of a football tournament, which contains Austria's Red Bull Salzburg, Liga MX's Pachuca, Al Hilal, one of the teams in Saudi Arabia that Cristiano Ronaldo doesn't play for, and Real Madrid, who have had a totally chill off season with no major storylines at all. Nothing to see here other than bringing in Xabi Alonso to replace outgoing manager Carlo Ancelotti and then paying $11.4 million to get right back Trent Alexander-Arnold from Liverpool a month early, a sum that I think they probably took out of Don Carlo's chewing gum budget for the year. Rory, got to ask you, because I'm a mad bastard and I'm a bit sadistic, after all of the drama, the Anfield boos, the goodbye video that looked like it was being filmed, at gunpoint at the end of the 2-decade era, which saw this local lad dream big and win everything there was with his boyhood club, what was it like for you to see him presented as a Real Madrid player, speaking in such good Spanish that even Duolingo's official account took notes? Did it take some of the sting out of it for you?
I just think it's really impressive that he's learnt Spanish. I think that's genuinely... There's been quite a lot of anger about that, as though it's a sign of how kind of deliberate and pointed this has all been. But you sort of think, well, this is just a guy who's clearly had a desire to go and live and work abroad and has prepared himself for that by learning the language. That is, of all the things to criticise people for, Roger, I feel like that should be quite a long way down the list.
Look at him bettering himself. Why would you do that?
I can't believe he's managed to... He's had a hobby. He's had a hobby for a whole year. This is outrageous. No, I think it suggests to me that Trent will be a success in Madrid, because I mean Gareth Bale was there for like 7 years, barely learnt any Spanish. I think Bellingham does speak Spanish, but quite a lot.
But how's Trent Alexander's short game, his approach game? I mean,
well, we'll find out. There's also quite a lot of golf courses in Madrid, to be honest. I think it suggests that he's taking it extremely seriously, that he's setting himself up to do as well as possible, and not just assuming that being a kind of Premier League star will be enough to carry him through. To me, that element speaks really well of him, and is something he should be really proud of.
I do love all the tweets this morning talking about how they can't wait for Florian Wirtz's first press conference where he stands up and shows that he's been learning Scouse, which is just, so chef's kiss. On Monday, it was reported because of injuries, players who had international commitments, Xabi Alonso had just 4 fully fit senior players at his first training session. I mean, does it matter, Raw? Will we talk about, if they don't win, Real or City or Chelsea or another of the big names in the field? This is the tournament you can win, but you really can't lose. I mean, I guess I'm asking, how much is really at stake here?
That's a really good question. I don't know, is the short answer. I think if you are a European team and you are beaten by somebody who kind of the general hierarchy of football would expect you to beat, I think it might be quite embarrassing. I think if Pachuca were to beat Real Madrid, then that would be a poor start to Xabi Alonso's reign. I think if you lose a semi-final to Paris Saint-Germain, it probably doesn't make any difference. And maybe that is actually the best gauge of where the tournament stands at the moment. Kind of what it is at this point. That the team that wins it will be really glad to have won it and will celebrate it like a true triumph. But the teams that lose it, the disappointment will be kind of dulled a little bit. It's not going to be a sharp pain that they feel, and maybe that is because it doesn't have the prestige of the Champions League. It doesn't have the prestige of the domestic tournaments. Maybe being disappointed at not winning something is the sort of thing that takes a while to acquire.
So I want to pull it together and get some predictions, some big bold claims, Raw. Before I do, I want to ask you: are there any kind of dark horse storylines that the hipsterish side of the Smith brain are processing that we should all be watching out for?
I think it'll be interesting to watch River play. There's a kid called Franco Mastantuono who is about to sign for Real Madrid, or maybe has already signed for Real Madrid, but he'll be playing for River in this tournament. And who doesn't love an Argentinian wonder kid? There's literally nothing about that sentence that's not enjoyable. I think the Brazilian teams, in terms of overturning the kind of established order and shocking the Europeans, I think the Brazilian teams are the ones who've got the best chances. I don't think Boca or River are especially strong at the moment. So maybe Flamengo, maybe Palmeiras, who've been really consistent. Botafogo are South American champions. They'd be the ones who I'd look at and say perhaps they can go furthest. I think Al Ahly will be better than people expect. That is, as you said at the start, Al Ahly is an enormous club. It's really hard to understand the scale of how big Al Ahly is. And I think the standard of teams from the Far East as well. I think Ulsan and Urawa Red Diamonds will be tough for teams to beat. We've seen in the smaller versions of the Club World Cup that the gaps between the other confederations are quite small. That we think of Asia and Africa and North America as being a level below South America maybe, but they're not really anymore. And it's those teams I think who might be able to cause a bit of a shock. But the main thing that I think will be really interesting is maybe against Real Madrid and PSG and Manchester City. Maybe those games will be quite straightforward for the big European teams, but I think the other ones will be quite engaging. I think the differences between Juventus, Borussia Dortmund, maybe Inter Milan, as we said, maybe even Chelsea, certainly Benfica, Porto, and teams from the rest of the world, I don't think they're as big as we think they are. And I think that might be what makes the tournament work.
I'm actually really fascinated to see the thought pieces on what this could mean for next summer's World Cup, which kicks off officially less than a year from now. Just 363 short days as we tape, but who's counting? I know FIFA originally thought about just locating the entire tournament on the East Coast, hoping that there'd be a real catchment, a massive following coming over from Europe. Then they scattered it across the entire nation. Ticket sales, or reports of them, talk a lot about the damp enthusiasm at the box office. In some places, the games, which are oddly timed, admittedly, many cases for the American market, in the middle of the day during the work week, seem a little bit less popular, should we say, than Labubu Key Change. Earlier this weekend, a source told The Athletic that fewer than 20,000 tickets have been sold for Inter Miami's opening matches against Al Ahly. Yes, there's a number of factors for that. The dynamic pricing system, which is being debuted, possibly even that Miami fans have gotten used to seeing Leo Messi play. There'll be a lot of thought pieces on what this means, particularly against the geopolitical reality here, which is another element of uncertainty and chaos around this tournament. But Raw, last question for you. According to Opta's supercomputer, PSG is odds on to win this thing, followed by Manchester City, Bayern Munich, and then Inter Milan. Of Chivu. But Opta just gave Wrexham a 0.02% chance of promotion last season, and I honestly trust it less than I trust you, Raw. So who do you have winning? Who's the runner-up? Tell us. Spoiler alert.
Well, first of all, I should admit I've not been through the brackets to work out what final combinations are possible just yet. That is very much a day of the tournament. A day of the tournament hobby for me. I would say that PSG looked like the safest of the bets, to be perfectly honest. They looked incredibly fresh in the Champions League final. They're coming in with their, with a real sort of confidence of having won that trophy and having won it in style. Luis Enrique's been very clear that he's quite keen on the Club World Cup. I'm certain that Nasser Al-Khelaifi, the PSG president, will want to say his team are world champions. But I've just got a bit of a sneaky suspicion that Manchester City will see this as the chance to save their season and to set up next season. So I'm going to say that I think City will win it. And it will be from either PSG or Real Madrid in the final. But I think there will be one Brazilian team in the semi-finals.
Oh, that's a given, Raw. Auckland, put all your money, whatever you do, listeners, put all your money, your life savings, liquidate your bonds. Trust me, I've never felt more confident about anything. Nothing can go wrong now. Raw, it's amazing to be with you. You are rumoured to be coming over into our loving arms in person in New York City at the back end, semi-final-ish final of this tournament. I cannot wait to be with you. It's incredible to listen to you. I miss you. We love you. Your newsletter, by the way, which you can subscribe to via Men in Blazers homepage, it's genuine. To carry your byline, Raw, you think I'm going to say something flip and damaging. I'm really not. Sincerely, it's beautiful for us.
Well, it's a pleasure to write it. And I think that, obviously part of me wants to have part of me thinks football needs a little bit of a break in the summer. But I'll admit, Rog, that the idea of seeing unusual kit combinations on the pitch has got me a little bit childlike and excited again. It doesn't quite feel like the World Cup. But it's, I can see this thing working. Unusual kit combinations, that's why we watch. And football also, just to promote Johnny Infantino's podcast numbers, that is also why we watch, baby. He's one of the great streamers of our time.
So we'll be remembered. Godspeed, I can't wait to be with you. Fans watching, by the way, the second the ball kicked off, we're all going to be sucked into this and adore every single second. To all of you, big, big love and courage.